Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to continue our look on writing classes in 3.3, talking about the this keyword. Okay, another pretty short and sweet lesson, but another one where it's a little bit tricky, so we're going to take a good chunk of time talking about kind of this simple idea. All right, so the keyword this is a reference to the current object. In other words, the object whose method or constructor is being called. Okay, so essentially it's a way for an object to refer to itself, and we'll refer to it as the implicit parameter. Okay, so this just means the object is referring to itself. Let's take a look at some reasons why you'd want object to refer to itself. All right, so what I have on the screen here is a pretty simple class, the monster class. I feel like we've looked at this before, where a monster has a name, it has two constructors, and a toString method. Now notice I've got a few different spots highlighted where I'm using that this keyword, okay, in a constructor, okay, to call a constructor, and then also within other methods. Let's take a look at why we'd want to do something like that and how it works. All right, so the first spot that the this showed up in our class was in the first constructor. Okay, public monster, and we're passing in a string called the name to set the name. And notice I have this dot name gets name. Now something I can't do is I can't just say name gets name, okay, as in the instance variable name gets the value of the parameter name. Java's not going to be able to distinguish between the two of them. What I can do though is if I say this.name, that refers to the instance variable of the monster object we're creating, and then when I just use the name here, that's going to refer to the parameter, basically the parameter that's created as a local variable in this constructor. Okay, why would I want to do this? Okay, this is to differentiate between the parameters and the instance variables, and this allows me to avoid creating extra names. Rather than calling this an N or a new name or something else, I can pass in the same names for my parameters as I have for instance variables and still make an assignment without confusing Java. Okay, so especially if you have a lot of different parameters, you don't want to make new stuff up for them, this can make life easier. Okay, the second spot we saw the this keyword was in my second constructor. Second constructor is a no arguments constructor, so I'm not passing any information into it. But as we know, even with a no arguments constructor, you still want to declare all your instance variables, or assign all your instance variables, so we still want to give the monster a name. So what I'm doing here is I can use the this to invoke another constructor. When I make this the call here, okay, just this with the parameter monster passed in, what it's going to do is it's going to call the single parameter constructor passing in monster as the name. Okay, so what is the point of this? Doesn't really eliminate any code in this case, but anytime I have two constructors where one is basically the same thing as the other, but just with some specific values set, I can use the this to invoke that constructor, okay, and save some lines of code by just calling to do basically the same thing in the previous constructor. Okay, we'll show you an example of kind of switching a no arguments constructor to that in a minute here or so. And again, the idea here is it simplifies code, not necessary, but can make the code a little bit shorter. And the last spot we saw that this keyword showed up was within the toString method. Okay, here I'm going to return the string name plus the monster's name. And what I'm doing here isn't necessary, but it's used to help add clarity, okay, to the variable I'm calling on. Again, especially if we have the variable name with a lot of different parameters or local variables called name as well. This.name just helps me add some clarity to where that variable is coming from. Okay, it's helpful but not necessary. Now, if you're learning Java a little over a decade ago, you would have to do the this.variable every time you were using a variable. Okay, Java's changed over the years, so not in this case. All right, let's take a look at another method that really helps to show why the this gets helpful as far as talking about referring to variables. Let's say I want to add another method to my class, okay, public void fight, where I pass in another monster object as a parameter. Okay, anytime we're dealing with two different objects, we have two different sets of instance variables that are being stored in Java. And it's going to be important that we can easily refer to the different objects without confusing them, especially when it comes time to do calculations with those different variables, to compare them, okay, to make sure we're talking about the right stuff. All right, so let's say what this method's meant to do is just print out the names of the two monsters fighting. Okay, so system.out.print. Now, when I'm referring to the object that this method is being called on, I don't need to do this to get the name, but I'm going to say this.name. And what that's going to do is help me distinguish between the object that's the parameter, the other, and here I can say other.name or other.getName. Okay, but I can use this and other convention to keep those two sets of instance variables separate. Okay, so again, it helps distinguish between the object the method is being called on and the other objects involved. Okay, in other words, the parameter objects being passed in. All right, so let's jump into CodeBoard and take a look at how we can use the this keyword to simplify a class that I already have written for you. Now, the thing about the this keyword is it's not actually necessary, but it is going to make life easier in some situations. I'll try to demo that for you here. Okay, so on Moodle, I've just got the 3.3 coding demonstration pulled up. And the class we're dealing with is the fruit basket class. And let's say it stores 3 instance variables, just the number of apples, number of oranges, number of pears. Okay, as I scroll through this, we have 2 constructors, a constructor that takes 3 arguments to set apples, oranges, and pears. Then also no arguments constructor. It also has a get num of each type of fruit methods, so some getter methods, a toString method, and then also an add basket method that we'll write here in a second. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can use this to simplify things. First off, with our 3 argument constructor, kind of our main constructor here, notice what I have to do to assign apples is I have to have a different name for the parameter. Now, maybe you're not a fan of that. Maybe I can't come up with another name. Maybe I just like this convention better. Now, if I do this, apples get apples. Will this compile? It will compile, but when I run this code, what Java is going to do is it's going to assign the parameter apples to apples. Okay, it's referring to this local variable, this local parameter apples, and not actually the instance variable here. Okay, so this code will compile, but it's not going to work. What I can do to make it work is say this.apples, as in my instance variable apples, gets the value of parameter apples. Okay, I can do the same thing for the oranges. And the pears. And again, what this does is allows you to avoid coming up with different names. I suppose I need to change these up top here as well. And it might kind of simplify the way you're looking at that constructor. Now, if this is a convention you like, do it. If not, don't worry about it. Okay, so we can use that this to distinguish between instance variables and local variables such as parameters. Okay, what else can I do? I can use it to simplify my no arguments constructor. Now, this constructor here, I'm not passing in any parameters, and it's doing what a constructor should do. It's setting all my instance variables, and in this case, setting them to 0. Now, what I can do instead of this code is I can say this, which will refer to another constructor. And as long as I make my parameter list on the this call match the parameter list of another constructor, such as this one, I can call it, I can say 0, space 0, space 0. And essentially what I'm doing here is I'm calling my 3 argument constructor up above with zeros passed in as all the parameters. Okay, so I'm going from 3 lines of code where I'm setting everything equal to 0 to a single line where I'm calling a different constructor. Okay, hopefully that compiles. Yep, it does. Let's go over to the runner where I'm creating 3 different fruit baskets. Okay, with the, let's see here, 5 apples, 3 oranges, 4 pears. Okay, one with 4 apples, 2 oranges, and 1 pear. And then one with the no arguments constructor. Let's make sure that works here actually. So if we've run that, let's see what we get. Yep, we've got our first fruit basket with a 5, 3, 4. Okay, 5, 3, 4. Second with a 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1. Okay, so I know that my this.apples equals apples convention works. And then for the third basket, we've got 0 apples, 0 oranges, 0 pears. Yep, so again, the calling the this as a constructor did work, okay, because it assigned the no argument constructor to zeros for each of the parameters. And what else do we have here? All right. Okay, the last thing I want to do here, and this is really the kind of biggest spot that this keyword is going to help us with. Okay, I want to create a method that adds a basket to my current basket. Okay, so in other words, I can take 2 baskets and combine them. And the way I'll call it when I go to my runner method is I want to be able to run this code where I can say basket1.add basket and then pass in another basket as a parameter, basket 2, and I want this method to take what was in basket 2 and add it to basket 1. Okay, so let's look at how we can make that work. Essentially what I want to do is I want to take all the apples from the other basket and add them to the method, to the object it's being called on. So to distinguish, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this.apples plus equals, so I'm going to add to my instance variable apples the apples stored in my other object, so we'll say other.apples. Okay, now there's a choice I can make on this one. I could say other.apples or other.getNumApples. Either one of those ways are going to work. Now, apples is a private variable, but since I'm dealing with it within the fruit basket class, I can refer to it just by a name. Okay, and again, I love this convention, this dot and other dot, to help me think about this refers to the object I'm calling things on, and the other refers to the object we're passing in. Okay, we can do that for the rest of them. All right, so we're going to add to this object's oranges the number of oranges from the other object. And the same thing with the pears. Let's compile this, we'll see if it works. Looks like Java likes. I suppose I'm going to uncomment this to show what happens after adding basket 1 after adding basket 2. Compile. We'll run. And let's see what happened here. Basket 1 was originally 5 apples, 3 apples, 4 pears. Basket 2 is 4 apples, 2 oranges, and 1 pear. Yep, when I add those together, I get my total of 9 apples, 5 oranges, and 5 pears. Okay, we could also add to that some code to drain basket 2 and set that equal to 0, but yeah, we'll just call it quits there for that example. All right, so there you go. That's the this keyword. Now again, it's not something that's necessary, but hopefully you see through those examples that it's going to make life easier. It's going to make your code a little bit cleaner. Okay, so as you're going into the homework for this section, you don't have to use it, but I encourage you to try to use it, force yourself to use it, just to get comfortable with it. And again, hopefully you're going to see how it makes life easier. Okay, have at it, crank out some code, and like always, let us know if you're getting stuck. We're here to help you out.